ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्य जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna, we welcome everyone for today's morning reading. We are reading from chapter number 2, verse number 71. Vihaya kaman yaha sarvan umam charati nihaspraha nirmamo nirankaraha Sashantim Adhigachati. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. A person who is given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, and who has given up all sense of proprietorship, and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. Sashantim Adhigachati. Vihaya Kaman Yah Sarvan. All kinds of desires for sense gratification has been given up. Purport. To become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desire for becoming Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. To understand one's actual position as the eternal servitor of Krishna without falsely claiming this material body to be oneself, and without falsely claiming proprietorship over anything in the world, is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. One who is situated in this perfect stage knows that because Krishna is the proprietor of everything, everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. Arjuna did not want to fight for his own satisfaction, but when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought because Krishna wanted him to fight. For himself, there was no desire to fight. But for Krishna, the same Arjuna fought to his best ability. Real desirelessness is desire for the satisfaction of Krishna, not an artificial attempt to abolish desires. The living entity cannot be desireless or senseless, but he does have to change the quality of the desires. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita also teaches us about desire management. A materially desireless person certainly knows that everything belongs to Krishna. Ishavasyam idam sarvam. And therefore he does not falsely claim proprietorship over anything. This transcendental knowledge is based on self-realization, namely knowing perfectly well that every living entity is an eternal part and parcel of Krishna and spiritual identity, and that the eternal position of the living entity is therefore never on the level of Krishna or greater than him. This understanding of Krishna consciousness is the basic principle of real peace. And what is that understanding of Krishna consciousness? I am not the enjoyer, I am not the proprietor, and I am not the controller of the things that I have. That's the point here. Krishna Mata Paratram Nanyat. And text number 72. In essence, if you take a look at the second chapter, Krishna is whatever concept, these are all concepts which are further elaborated in later chapters. Krishna had made it very clear, what is the relationship between me and the living entities, how can you attain peace if you do things for the pleasure of Lord's senses or my senses, etc. etc. Now we come to the last verse of the second chapter. Esha Brahmi Sthiti Partha Naina Prapya Vimuyati Stitva Syamanta Kalapi Brahma Nirvana Machati Very, very important verse. So, what is the ultimate goal of Bhagavad Gita that is being highlighted in the 72nd verse? From one perspective, this was the last verse that Krishna spoke, because Arjuna asked, therefore Krishna began to speak. Otherwise, this is the last verse. So, if in case somebody asks you a question and when you're giving an answer, and then the last statement is the super emphasis. So, Prabhu, this is what I want to tell you, because people miss out. So, you make a last statement. So, this is in one perspective, you see, this is the concluding statement of so far Krishna's discussion. Krishna spoke about Sankhya Yoga, Krishna spoke about Bhakti Yoga, Krishna spoke about the importance of controlling mind and senses, and Krishna spoke about how, one should not consider oneself to be the doer or the cause of one's activity, etc., etc., and, the importance of following rules and regulation. Now, what could be the possibility of the final instruction that Krishna want to give? And this is the verse which defines the purpose, the ultimate purpose of Bhagavad Gita. And what is that? Brahma Nirvana Mrachati. To attain spiritual world or to go back home, back to Godhead, is the ultimate purpose of human form of life. And that is what Bhagavad Gita teaches us. That is a way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. Vimutiti. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of Godhead. Asatoma Satgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. That's the conclusion of Vedic scriptures, and that's the purpose which is being highlighted in Bhagavad Gita also. Not to live and enjoy in this world. Like when devotee was speaking to Indian ambassador at Russia, posted at Russia, and during the course of the discussion on Bhagavad Gita, this Indian ambassador said Gandhi was a fool. He always kept a copy of Bhagavad Gita in his hand, and he said Bhagavad Gita teaches peace. In which verse Krishna says peace? Krishna always tell Arjuna, get up and fight. So he said Gandhi is a fool, because he's saying Bhagavad Gita says live peacefully, like that. So then this devotee asked, so sir, what is your understanding? What is Bhagavad Gita? He is an avid reader of Bhagavad Gita. So he said, my understanding of Bhagavad Gita is that we should fight for our motherland. We should protect our country. And the devotee was wondering, where does Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that Arjuna, get up and fight for your motherland? So he made it a book of patriotism. And then the devotee said to this Indian ambassador posted at Russia, he said, do you know, sir, there is a verse in Bhagavad Gita which says Sarva Dharman Parityaja, which means give up your Raj Dharma, Kula Dharma, Varna Dharma, all dharmas you give up, and you surrender to Krishna and follow only Krishna, with an aim to go back home, back to Godhead. And this ambassador said, oh really? There is something like this in this Bhagavad Gita? I would have to read again. This is somebody who read Bhagavad Gita many times, and Sarva Dharman Parityaja. So this is what 72nd verse, and then same thing comes later on the 18th chapter. Give up everything, just surrender to me. I shall protect you, like that. Purport. Can we have another mic? Another mic. One can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once within a second, or one may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. It is only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. Khatwanga Maharaj attained the state of life just a few minutes before his death by surrendering unto Krishna. Nirvana, which is also known as moksha, means ending the process of materialistic life. According to Buddhist philosophy, there is only void after the completion of this material life. And Bhagavad Gita teaches differently. Actual life begins after the completion of this materialistic life. For the gross materialist, it is sufficient to know that one has to end this materialistic way of life. But for a person who is spiritually advanced, there is another life after this materialistic life, before ending this life. You can have a cable mic, or either thing. I want somebody else to read. Mathematics is not good. Actual life begins like this. Before ending this life, if one fortunately becomes Krishna conscious, he at once attains the stage of Brahma Nirvana. There is no difference between the kingdom of God and the devotional service of the Lord, since both of them are on the absolute plane. To be engaged in the transcendent loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. In the material world, there are activities of sense gratification, whereas in the spiritual world, there are activities of Krishna consciousness. Attainment of Krishna consciousness, even during this life, is immediate attainment of Brahman. And when you are situated in Krishna consciousness, has certainly already entered into the kingdom of Godhead. Brahman is just the opposite of matter. Therefore, in 1954, two physicists came up with a philosophy for which they got a Nobel Prize: matter and antimatter. So Brahman is antimatter. Prabhupada writes, Brahman is just the opposite of matter. Therefore, Brahmisthiti means not on the platform of material activities. Devotional service of the Lord is accepted in the Bhagavad Gita as the liberated stage. Saguna samiti etam brahma bhuyaya alpati. Therefore, Brahmisthiti is liberation from material bondage. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has summarized the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as being the contents for the whole text. In the Bhagavad Gita, the subject matters are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. In the second chapter, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga have been clearly discussed, and glimpses of Bhakti Yoga have been given as the contents for the complete text. Thus, end the Bhaktivedanta purpose to the second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of its contents. Hari Bol. So today we have completed 145 pages of Bhagavad Gita, and we have only few hundred pages to go, but we are progressive. All right. Chapter number 3, titled as Karma Yoga. Arjuna Vacha Jayayasi Chet Karmanaste Matabuddhi Janadana Tatkam Karmani Gore Mam Niyojasi Keshava. Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think intelligence is better than fruitive work? But the Supreme Personality Godhead has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter, with a view to delivering his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. And the path of self-realization has been recommended, Buddhi Yoga. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia, inactivity. And one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy names of the Lord. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy names in a secluded place, where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or Buddhi Yoga or intelligence and spiritual advancement as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained Karma Yoga, or working Krishna consciousness, in this third chapter. Early today morning, I was just thinking about it. We often find people in our country at large are very lazy and very irresponsible in terms of their duties. I was recently reading about Prabhupada days in Vrindavan, and there one devotee was mentioning, not Prabhupada days in Vrindavan, it's actually after that. So one devotee was in charge of certain construction, and he was mentioning that he could not ever understand why the labor will not turn up on his own to do the work. The labor was paid money in time, the resources were gathered, everything was provided, but every day the labor will give some other excuse. So this devotee, every morning his seva, his devotional service was to go on the houses of those laborers, knock on the door, wake them up and beg them, please, please, aao kaam karo. And he is the person who was paying them. So he was saying, I could never understand why people would act like this. So I was thinking and reflecting on that. Largely, it is because of how Vedic culture has been destroyed. See, what is Bhagavad Gita all about? At least it brings you immediately on the platform of duty, if not love. Love will happen gradually. But immediately brings you on the platform of duty, be dutiful, perform your duties. Arjuna, you are a Kshatriya, you cannot give up your duty. And Prabhupada here is addressing that how Arjuna wanted to skillfully avoid fighting by making an excuse of Krishna consciousness, by making an excuse of spiritual life, trying to walk away from the active life. No. Be dutiful, perform your duty. You don't have to give up anything. Just in your mind, you have to become Krishna conscious by accepting the training, by studying scriptures. So here in today's world, if somebody takes to sannyas or renunciation, it's considered like, that's it. He's got nothing to do with this world. But Srila Prabhupada taught us differently. Now, the most active people, if you say in ISKCON, are not the one who are working outside, are the one who are working within the four walls of temple. Yes or no? They're the one who manage the whole temple, they manage the whole community, they go out and preach. I'm not comparing brahmachari grahastha, that's not the point. I'm just saying renunciation is not about sitting idle. Renunciation means becoming more active, more dutiful, more responsible towards the well-being of oneself and also the others. That is the point, and that is what Bhagavad Gita teaches. Text number 2. Vyamrishneva vakena buddhe mohasiva me tadekam vada nishchitya yena shrevam apnuyam. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions, O Lord. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be the most beneficial for me. Purport. Read Francis. We can read it.
Purport. In the previous chapter, as a prelude to the Bhagavad Gita, many different paths were explained, such as Sankhya Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, control of the senses by intelligence, work without fruitive desire, and the position of the neophyte. This was all presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path would be necessary for action and understanding. Arjun, therefore, wanted to clear up these apparently confusing matters so that any common man could accept them without misinterpretation. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjun by any jugglery of words, Arjun could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness, either by inertia or by active service. In other words, by his questions, he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who seriously want to understand the mystery of the Bhagavad Gita.
Text number 3. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Lokesmin Dvividha Nishta Puraprokt Mayanaga Jnana Yogena Sankhyana Karma Yogena Yoginam. Lord Shri Krishna said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical philosophical speculation, that is Jnana or Sankhya, and others by devotion service, that is Buddhi or Bhakti Yoga. Purport. And this is what had been a discussion in second chapter, right? Sankhya Yoga and Buddhi Yoga. Purport. In the second chapter, verse number 39, the Lord explained two kinds of procedures, Sankhya and Karma. In this verse, the Lord explains the same more clearly. Sankhya Yoga, or the analytical study of the nature of spirit and matter, is a subject matter for persons who are inclined to speculate and understand things by experimental knowledge and philosophy. The other classes of men work in Krishna consciousness, as it is explained in the 61st verse of the second chapter. The Lord is explained also in the 39th verse that by working by the principles of Buddhi Yoga or Krishna consciousness, one can be relieved from the bonds of action. And furthermore, there is no flaw in the process. The same principle is more clearly explained in the 61st verse, that this Buddhi Yoga is to depend entirely on the Supreme. And in this way, all the senses can be brought under control very seriously. Therefore, both the yogas are interdependent, as religion and philosophy. Religion without, please mark it, very famous statement of Prabhupada. Religion without philosophy is sentiment, or sometimes fanatism. As we see modern day religious practices, they don't even have more than one book. They just have one abridged version of the book, and most of the people don't understand what is being spoken there. If you are fanatic, you make a fanatic commentary out of it. And that's why we have terrorists being born, reading a religious book. Think about it. Religion without philosophy is sentiment or sometimes fanatism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. That is Darwin's philosophy about life. How the life, how the different species came into existence. Or what's his name of the Stephen Hawking's, his philosophy also. So philosophy without religion means philosophy without God is mental speculation. The ultimate goal is Krishna, and because the philosophers who are also sincerely searching after the absolute truth come in the end to Krishna consciousness. This is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita. The whole process to understand the real position of the self in relation to the super self. The indirect process is philosophical speculation, by which gradually one may come to the point of Krishna consciousness. Another process is directly connecting everything with Krishna in Krishna consciousness. Of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process, and by the direct method of devotion service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime. So this whole Jnana Marg has certain prerequisites. Unless you meet that prerequisites, you cannot start the practice of Jnana Marg. Whereas the Bhakti Marg requires no prerequisites. Only the condition is your willingness to follow it. That's it. And then by the accepting the principles of Bhakti Yoga, like chanting the holy names of the Lord, reading scriptures like that, we gradually become purified. However, we need to be purified to a certain level before we can take to the Jnana Yoga process. Even after that, you get a Jnana Yoga process, there's no guarantee of success because you're searching for the absolute truth. Whereas in Bhakti Yoga, you know who is absolute truth. Text number 4. Na karmanam anarambha neshkarmyam purushoshnude na cha sannyasana deva siddhim samadhigacchati. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction. O Arjuna, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. So it's not that if you don't perform work, you will not get reactions. It is not that you take to renunciation, you will attain perfection. Not like that. In either of the place, we have to perform action. So now the discussion, what kind of action? Puppet, please read the puppet.
The renounced order of life can be accepted when one has been purified by the discharge of the prescribed form of duties which are laid down just to purify the hearts of materialistic men. Without purification, one cannot attain success by abruptly adopting the fourth order of life, sannyas. According to the empirical philosophers, simply by adopting sannyas or retiring from future activities, one at once becomes as good as Narayana. But Lord Krishna does not approve this principle. Without purification of heart, sannyas is simply a disturbance to the social order. On the other hand, if someone takes to the transcendental service of the Lord, even without discharging his prescribed duties, whatever he may be able to advance in the cause is accepted by the Lord. Buddhi Yoga. So alpamapiyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Even a slight performance of such of principle enables one to overcome great difficulties.
Text number 5. Nahi kaschit shanam api jatu tishthatya karma krit karyate hi avashaha karma sarvaha prakate jay gunahe. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. It's just not possible. We have karmatmakam buddhi. Our intelligence is always thinking about what to do next, what to do next. That's how we always function. That's the point being highlighted here. Purports. It is not a question of embodied life, but it is the nature of the soul to be always active. Without the presence of the soul, the material body cannot move. The body is only dead vehicle to be worked by the spirit soul, which is always active and cannot stop even for a moment. As such, the spirit soul has to be engaged in the good work of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it will be engaged in occupations dictated by the illusory energy. In contact with material energy, the spirit soul acquires material modes. And to purify the soul from such affinities, it is necessary to engage in the prescribed duties as enjoined in the Shastras. But if the soul is engaged in his natural function of Krishna consciousness, whatever he is able to do is good for him. Tyaktva sadharmam charanam bhajam hare bhajan apakpota pate tato yadi yatra kavabhadna bud avishyakim kava tuavto bhajatam sadharmata. Please read the translation of the verse.
If someone takes to Krishna consciousness, even though he may not follow the prescribed duties in the Shastras or execute the devotional service properly, and even though he may fall down from the standard, there is no loss or evil for him. But if he carries out all the injunctions for purification in the Shastras, what does it avail him if he is not Krishna conscious? So the purificatory process is necessary for reaching this point of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, sannyas or any purificatory process is to help reach the ultimate goal of becoming Krishna conscious. without which everything is considered a failure.
If at the end of life we cannot remember Krishna, so what was the use of a whole human form of life? That's the point. Antakale chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram. So Bharat Maharaj was a great king, was a great devotee, but at the end of the life he became attached to deer. Shamaevahi kevalam. But because he had performed bhakti, the bhakti wherever it stopped, it continued from that in the next life. But this is the point Prabhupada is making here. Now, what's another problem with this Jnana Marg? People become pretender. So don't be a pretender. Text number 6. Karmendriyani samyamya ya ase manasa smaran indriyatha vyudatma mitajara sa uchyate. And this is not only a problem with the Jnana Marg, this could be very much a problem with the renunciates, even within the Bhakti Marg. Translation. What is it? One who restrains the senses of action but whose mind dwells on sense objects certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. So somebody is attached to his renunciation or his saffron attire. Why attached? Because you get respect in the society. You know, people consider you as a teacher. But within our mind and through our actions, we are still engaged, absorbed to sense gratification. A renunciation who has to accept. I'm talking about now renunciation within the Bhakti Yoga Marg. This verse has been spoken about in general about Jnanis, who give up everything, go to the forest, and they become a pretender, although they have given up everything, but they're still thinking about family, they're still thinking about wealth, woman, etc. I'm making more point here, applying the same thing within our renounced order, within our Bhakti Marg. So if a renounced order has been accepted, okay, we take renounced orders, not that we are purified at that point of time, but the practice of renounced order, if you're doing, but with the motivation anything other than serving Guru and Gauranga, then we are in one sense pretender. When service comes, we make excuses. When service comes, we remember the pains and pleasure of body. Oh, my head is aching, my body is aching, I cannot do this, I cannot do that. But when the time of prasadam comes, all the misery goes away. We we jump on the prasadam plate, whatever it is, everything. So, I mean, what kind of renunciation it is? A renounced order means you're supposed to inspire the other orders to also become detached. But if by our action, we are enjoying the facilities given to us, if a grasta invites us, we go with an intention, I'm going to devour a big meal. I mean, you become a laughing stock in the community. So we have to always remember, what's state of my consciousness. And if my state of consciousness is not up to the mark, then better we stay in the background, do humble services to purify oneself. One should not come up in the front, take a leadership role. It's a very much materialistic consciousness where everyone wants to lead, regardless of the fact, am I qualified to lead or not? Puppet. There are many pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness but make a show of meditation while actually dwelling within the mind upon sense enjoyment. Such pretenders may also speak on dry philosophy in order to bluff sophisticated followers. But according to this verse, these are the greatest cheaters. For sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order. But if one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make a gradual progress in purifying his existence. But he who makes a show of being a yogi, while actually searching for the objects of sense gratification, must be called the greatest cheater. Even though he sometimes speaks of philosophy, his knowledge has no value because the effects of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord. Such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever. So congregation of Grahastha makes advancement by serving sadhus, and sadhus make advancement by restraining themselves, not taking the advantage of the service rendered by the Grahasthas to them. Text number 7. Rather, they have a mood to serve the Grahasthas. Text number 7 now. Yastindriyani manasa niyamarvat arjuna karmendrihi karma yogam asaktaha sa vishishyate. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. Purport. Please read the purport.
Instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living in sense enjoyment, it is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. The prime Swarthagati, or the goal of self-interest, is to reach Vishnu. The whole institution of Varna and Ashram is designed to help us reach this goal of life. A householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. For self-realization, one can live a controlled life, as prescribed in the Shastras, and continue carrying out his business without attachment, and in that way make progress. A sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopts show-bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than the charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living.
A living. Text number 8. You cannot even maintain your body without work. Krishna says, Niyatam kuru karma tvam karma jyayo hi karmana sharira yatra pichate na prasiddhyat akarmana. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. Read the purport.
There are many pseudo-meditators who misinterpret themselves as belonging to a high parentage, and great professional men who falsely pose that they have sacrificed everything for the sake of advancement in spiritual life. Lord Krishna did not want Arjun to become a pretender. Rather, the Lord desired that Arjun performed his prescribed duties as set forth for Kshatriyas. Arjun was a householder and a military general, and therefore it was better for him to remain as much as such and perform his religious duties as prescribed for the householder Kshatriya. Such activities gradually cleanse the heart of a mundane man and free him from material contamination. So-called renunciation for the purpose of maintenance is never approved by the Lord, nor by any religious scripture. After all, one has to maintain one's body and soul together by some work.
All right. 2 lines below. Anyone who is in the material world is certainly possessed of the impure propensity for lording it over material nature. In other words, for sense gratification. Please highlight now. Such polluted propensities have to be cleared. Without doing so, through prescribed duties, one should never attempt to become a so-called transcendentalist, renouncing work and living at the cost of others. Text number 9, which is the last verse in this particular section of the 3rd chapter, where in the first 9 verse, Lord Shri Krishna is talking about the concept of this, tyaga. What is real renunciation? The real renunciation is of our propensities to exploit and enjoy. That is real renunciation, not the renunciation of our karma or dharma. I mean, our prescribed duties. Text number 9, very, very important verse. Yagnartha karmano nyatra loko yam karma bandhana tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samacharaha. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in the material world. Therefore, son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. In that way, you will always remain free from bondage. Purport. Since one has to work even for the simple maintenance of the body, the prescribed duties for a particular social position and quality are so made that the purpose can be fulfilled. Yajna means Lord Vishnu. All sacrificial performances are meant for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. The Vedas enjoin Yagnohi Vishnuhu. In other words, the same purpose is served whether one performs prescribed yajnas or directly serves Lord Vishnu. Krishna consciousness is therefore performance of yajna as it is prescribed in this verse. The Varnashrama institution also aims at satisfying Lord Vishnu. Varnashrama charavata purushena parhapavan Vishnu aradhyate. Therefore, one has to work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Any other work done in this material world will be cause of bondage. Few lines below. This is the art of doing work, and in the beginning, this process requires very expert guidance. One should therefore act very diligently under the expert guidance of a devotee of Lord Shri Krishna, and under the direct instruction of Krishna. Nothing should be performed for sense gratification, but everything should be done for the satisfaction of Krishna. This is called as yajna or penance. This practice will not only save one from the reaction of work, but also gradually elevate one to transcendental loving service of the Lord, which alone can raise one to the kingdom of God or Godhead. This is called as Karma Yoga. In essence, Karma Yoga principle means with the mind and senses control, perform your duties, and the results that you get or may not get, is not our worry. We perform our duties because that is my responsibility. This is what my prescribed duty, and this is how I serve Krishna. And if I get the result, I try to use it in the service of the Lord. Not that first I take out my share, then remaining share I give it to Krishna. Ideally, the principle is first we give it to the Lord, and then we keep it. For example, the government doesn't take tax from you. Government gives salary to you. Yes or no? The tax gets deducted at the base salary. Is that correct in India? Is that what happens? At least in America, would happen like this. Before you get the money in your hand or your salary, it has already been deducted from the tax, or tax have been separated out. In other words, the government gives you, and government has taken a share. So if government can do it, and which we know who's exploiting us, cheating us, so when it comes to our results, shouldn't we first offer to Lord and then accept? But first we take our share, and remaining at the end of month, सारा खर्चा होने के बाद बाई चांस कुछ बचा है तो फिर थोड़ा हुंडी में डाल देते हैं. So that's the other way around. We should rather first serve the Lord and then plan out our living. That is in simple way becomes Karma Yoga. That's a way of living simple life with higher thinking. Now the next 10th verse onwards starts another discussion. What about those who cannot perform Karma Yoga? So Krishna will say, all right, let them at least do Karma Kanda. What is Karma Kanda? Where mutual dependence, so that you live a happy life. Mutual dependence on other living entities, primarily mutual dependence on the Devta being described here. Here Krishna will talk about how at the beginning of creation, he had established a system of mutual interdependence between the living entities and the Devtas. Devtas refers to the personalities who are the presiding deities of different resources in this creation. Vayu Devta, Varuna Devta, Agni Devta, right? These are different elements, different resources. So if you want rain in the Devta, then we should perform penances to please Indra, and there will be plenty of rainfall. Like that is a Vedic understanding. We'll discuss that when Prabhupada purports tomorrow onwards. With that, we pause here for today. Our time is 3 minutes beyond 7:15. Hare Krishna. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you.